Hello, everybody. Good evening, and welcome to this latest episode of the GM Post-Mortem, where tonight, Lydia and I are going to be fixing something I suck at, which is doing way too much prep and then not actually using any of it. Lydia, is this a problem that you've had, or is this a me thing?
I was really looking for moments where that happened to, support you emotionally.
Thank you, I knew that.
But n no,
Mm.
I do prep a lot. And sometimes I don't. I have not yet really found out a complete rhyme and reason to what the fuck I'm doing. I certainly prep more than our special guest today,
Mm.
but so far I've never really had the issue that I feel like I didn't get to use any of the stuff I wrote up. Occasionally I have to drop bits and pieces, but that's normal, I think.
I think it's kind of a. When I was reflecting on this, I realized, I don't really do this much anymore, I don't think. But then, of course, I may have swung the pendulum the other way, and now I just under prep way too much. That's actually a possibility. Um, oh, sorry about that. Let me see if I
Well,
can. Sorry, apparently my audio's a little quiet. Just trying to fix that.
ah,
But yeah,
well,
I used to have that problem. I feel like, but I've gotten better, and probably due to many of the same tips and tricks that we'll hear about from our special guest.
let's bring him in.
I suppose we should. Yes, let's bring him in.
Nobody, nobody tell him what day of the week it is. Just, let's go with the usual.
If anyone
Go
asks,
with Tuesday.
it's
It's
Tuesday.
Tuesday. It's
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Yeah.
Right. Well, let's go talk to Mr. Tuesday himself. Nat.
Hi. Oh,
oh,
you
sorry.
didn't see you coming there.
Did we catch you in a
Moment of
strange moment?
repose.
Mm. Well, on
Yeah,
this
good
fine
Tuesday to you.
Tuesday,
Tuesday.
Good Tuesday.
Tuesday,
Tuesday.
Tuesday. How is the man with the best tie in TTRPG?
Damn right.
I'm feeling pretty good today. Gonna talk to a topic that is near and dear to my heart because I value my time.
Wow. Was that shade? Does that qualify as shade? It feels like
Mm.
it qualified a
Mm.
little bit as shade. So we used to do the Cobble Press GM advice tips, tricks, and Tuesday for a little while together, and I've learned a lot from you, and especially when it comes to GM prep and to overthinking things, I guess.
Mm.
It was really interesting clashing with you back in the day.
Have you
Not,
come? Have you come to my side of things?
yeah, I'm not sure I was really that far off your side of things. I just felt bad when I always under prepped in my book, but at the same
Mm.
time, yeah, like I said earlier, I haven't really found any particular rhyme or reason to my approach to GMing. But how would you generally classify your approach to GM prep?
I would describe it as player oriented and off the cuff. Those are the two descriptions, and I don't mean off the cuff as an entirely. I just comes off the top of my brain and into the session. But like, I am very willing to sacrifice what I was thinking if a better idea comes along right away.
And I find that a better idea always comes along if you're looking for it. And it seems to be something your players did, some idea that they had that you totally didn't really have percolating at all, but they come up with a plan, they come up with a scheme, they come up with a location they want to visit or a certain character they want to talk to that wasn't in your plans, but damn it, that's cool, and let's do it.
Mhm.
And sometimes you got to throw out the script. And I guess what I found was the problem was having a script in the first place. um, so that's actually where I wanted
Yeah.
to start a little bit, to kind of demonstrate the way this can go, or the way it can go wrong. So I was asking both of you before the show to uh, think about some kind of horror stories, sometimes that you super over prepped and used none or little of it. And I have one I'd like to start with because it wasn't just one time; it was a whole campaign basically that I super over prepped, and this is one of those, I think, great. Oh, Tom, I know exactly what you're talking about. This one game on the 4th of July. Oof. It's one of those classic, I feel like, early GM mistakes where you get so freaking excited that you've made this big, beautiful world. You know, you've got your first ever like campaign setting you've made yourself, and it reminds me of what we were talking about with Anita a couple weeks ago about when you're that kind of the visionary capital V GM trademark, the one who just has this big beautiful sandbox you've made, and you just can't wait for everyone to come play around in it. But in focusing so much on that big picture, on that really the macro level, the world, you forget the micro level. You forget the fact that this is a game that's run session by session, and that in every session they're going to have to do something. So I made my first world. This is Lydia. You're gonna love this. So many of my names for settings and stuff. I've talked about this before. Is doing like I'll go on Google Translate and just like put in words that I think relate to the world, and then I'll find them in different languages and then change them. Yeah, I've done that all the time, right? It's only recently, due to your tutelage, Lydia, that I learned the function of an umlaut when over the letter O, and how that actually sounds. I did like the stupid metalhead thing where I put a non-functional umlaut on a word because I thought it looked cool, right? The downside was of this, the end result I now know now, 29-year-old Colin, I made this world when I was 17, 16, 17? No, 18, I was in college. And I named my world Urine, is what I'm telling you. The world was called Urine. If you actually, it was it was Jorin, and I meant for it to be pronounced Urine, but because of the umlaut, I named it.
Also, not much better.
Yeah, I know, it sounded cool at the time. But now, I mean, I thought it looked nice on the map at the bottom. It looked really pretty. I was like, oh, you're in, and then yeah, I named a world Urine. So in Piss World, I
Do you at least have a urine town?
there's not a Urine town now you mention it. That's on the map now. I still have I can show it to you sometime if you're ever curious. I still have the world map. I was very proud of it. It was very pretty. But I made this gigantic world, and it was all these different countries I created, and there was this big, huge ocean called the Abaddon Traverse down at the lower southwest of the map, and all these continents and stuff. But then when it came time to do the actual campaign, this was my first really long-form campaign. It went on for 2.5 years. I had all of this crap right down to like the individual, every country I knew their chief exports and the sizes of their navies. I knew their most populous cities. I knew some of the most popular music styles in these worlds. But then when we actually get into it, they're just in one country, in one place, in one town. And I realized we started playing, and I'm like, all I have is a ton of trivia about my world. I don't have what's actually in front of you. So that campaign ran for 2.5 years, and in that time, as far as all the world building and lore building I did, we used 5% of it, probably. And all of that was wasted time.
So I think what we have just experienced is a very, very good example of the polar opposite. What Nat mentioned, it wasn't player focused. It wasn't.
Yeah.
No, not at all. Yeah,
not at all.
not at all. No, it was a very, very young GM mistake. And this is a lot of. I talked about this when we had Anita too. Some of this was some inherited bad habits I'd gotten from my first GM, because I just kind of thought that's how you did things. And I had to unlearn a lot of stuff that I had learned from a GM who kind of sucked. And yeah, I mean, the campaign ended up. Yeah, Cadence makes a good point. It wasn't wasted time if you enjoyed it, and I did. World building is super fun. I love world building and lore building. But it was wasted time in the sense that it didn't contribute to the player's fun at all. And so what actually did contribute to the fun was all of the crap that I just made up on the fly. Was the improvised NPCs and the improvised adventure hooks, and I had to learn how to do that to fix all of the wasted time that I had doing the world building. So I've known a lot of GMs that have done that same thing, and while it is very, very fun as an intellectual exercise to create a world and get really into it, a lot of times you don't end up using it. And I think that's, we're going to talk more about this later, but I honestly think that's my biggest prep reducing tip is uh, spending time prepping only the things that will actually impact what the players are going to do that session. Anything else is for your own time, but don't call it prep. It's not prep. It's just world building or lore building. So that's mine. It really went, yeah, it was 2.5 years of over prepping. Nat, can you think of a particular occasion when you over prepped and under delivered?
So I had a similar scenario where I had like a world I overworked, and I had another time where I started making character sheets for monsters because I didn't know the monster manual existed yet. But the story I have for you today is the bag of holding hot tub story.
Yeah, you teased that in Green Room, and that is, I'm
Yeah.
already just absolutely enamored. Tell me more.
So we had this I had this very lazy, just like, oh, pick up with whoever can show up monthly D&D game. We call it our Green Dragon Adventures. And slowly people started to actually like come consistently and then pushing for it to happen more often. So it kind of turned into a normal campaign over time. And they just done a bunch of stuff, finished a big quest arc, and there was an earthquake. And I had all this stuff for them to rush back to the capital city and help with earthquake relief and do all this crisis shit and all that craziness. I spent like an hour and a half, which is a lot of time for me. Lydia can attest, prepping all that. And then they were like, okay, well, we've got to walk there first. And as we were walking there, they were like, okay, well, one of us can turn into a horse. So we're going to return the horse, and then we're going to all get in the bag of holding. And I'm like, whoa, there's oxygen problems. They're like, got it. Water in it, water breathing, the classic solution. Everyone gets in the hot tub bag of holding, except like one person and the druid who was a horse. And then we're like halfway there, and one of the players, who by the way, I've been playing with for like 5 years at this point. So like the fact that there was like 4 of us at the table who'd been playing 5e since it came out, and we didn't realize, oh, bags of holding have weight limits. You know how much water weighs?
That never, I guess, come to think of it, I don't blame you too much for that. I don't think I've ever really had to like futz with the weight limit on a bag of holding, to be honest with you. I forgive you.
So, fair enough. So, when a bag of holding is overloaded, it bursts open and yeets all of its contents into the astral plane.
Yeah, that's one of the
Which includes
downsides.
all my
Yeah.
player characters. So by the end of the session, they had futzed through the astral sea, gotten their way to Sigil, the city of doors, and started getting into some mafia deal. And all that prep I did was just like sitting on the side, like, what the fuck was this for?
All that prep you did was jettisoned into the astral sea.
Yeah. And to this day, I have not pulled back that prep yet. Like, it was truly wasted prep. I haven't managed to repurpose it since then. So that's my favorite one. And frankly, the session was great. Like, I want to emphasize that the session was great, but I wasted a lot of time.
That's a common thing I noticed, though.
That is the most important thing, yeah.
Yeah, I just noticed that's a common. When the prep does go out the window, it's usually still fun. It's fine. You just have to learn to lean into it a little bit. Lydia,
often prep time feels like it's self-soothing more than anything else. The problems arise when you then have to put in all the stuff or when a GM feels like they have to put in all the stuff, cutting players off because they need to showcase their fantastic world building skills. I think you can over prep if you want, if that's what makes you feel a little bit better, if that what soothes your anxiety, that's fine. Just be prepared to not use half of the stuff you came up with. Doesn't mean it gets lost. It's still sitting there. Yeah. You can use it for a different thing. But that was the guards game we played, Nat, because my previous guards game, the one I was GMing, my first big one, it's episodic. So we didn't really have that problem because there was not as much player choice as there is in a campaign, because everyone had that episodic setting in mind and everyone was willing to play with everything I threw at them, and railroading was not an issue for anyone. At least they never told me so. Um, and the guards game we had also had only 4 episodes, to be fair, so you were also very willing to work with that. But then you decided to go for lunch,
Tell
which
me
to
more,
this
tell
day,
me more.
to this day, is my favorite
You want
fucking
tacos?
thing. Yeah,
Can I get
Oh, the
tacos?
taco story. I remember this.
it it was literally just you wanted a short break, but is there a place where we can get tacos, and then the rest is history? Because yes, there was an all you can eat, or not all you can eat, but world foods exotic eatery, and of course you had to go through the menu for all sorts of foods, and I had to make shit up for an American player base as a European. That was fun in itself. um and that turned into an hour and a half, I think, of playtime.
Second half of the session.
Yeah, pretty much. And that wasn't planned, but it was hilarious. And I had planned to end with a different beat. I had planned to do other things. And like, yeah, that's not going to happen, but I'm okay with it because it was hilarious.
For the
Very fun.
for the benefit of anyone who doesn't see it, is the entirety of the story that Nat just wanted to get lunch and you had to make up
So-
a food court, basically? Is it?
Legit, I was just trying to suggest in character we take a short rest. That's all it was.
That's all it was. It was they were playing guards of the city of Eden on Encounter Roleplay, and Anna is also to blame in chat. I'm hearing streams,
Yep.
but
Yep.
and Jesse and Tom, of course. And it was literally just an in-character way of saying, let's take a short rest, let's get lunch break. But then, as soon as who mentioned tacos first? I think as soon as tacos were mentioned,
It was me.
So it is your fault.
Oh, it's
it
my
is your
fault.
fault.
Yeah. So Mork is a legacy character. He always has a thing for tacos. It comes back.
Mm.
It's recurring.
Mork's legacy will live on as well. Like,
Mork.
Oh, you should. I was looking to play a game of Morkborg soon. Nat, have you heard of that game?
I have. Very different in theme.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm just curious. Can we just take Mork and import him into Morkborg and see how that works?
He'd have the worst day. He'd have the worst
Ooh.
day.
God, that game is badass. I'm looking for that. I'm going to be casting for that one for
Yeah.
this channel soon because I love that game. But Lydia, would you say
So-
that that was a wasted prep time or
oh fuck no!
no? Yeah,
I don't think prep time is ever wasted.
I disagree
think-
on that. I think it can be a waste.
I'm gonna be that bitch saying, but even if you throw everything out, you've learned something about yourself for the next time. Not to do it the next time. That's still not a waste.
This is where we need
I mean,
Savvy to
those-
come in and say, "Think about it."
Think about it.
Oh. But Lydia, like if I'm walking to the grocery store and I get stabbed and I learn something from it, was that like a worthwhile experience then?
Boom, got her.
That is no, you don't. That is not
Checkmate,
an
atheist.
analogy that works in any way, shape, or form.
Well,
You're not getting stabbed when why am I
Okay.
engaging with this?
I think prep time. Hear me out. I think prep time can be wasted very much if you're doing the wrong kind of prep. If it's not actually contributing to the session that you're about to have, like if you are building, if you are outlining the economies of nation states when your characters need to be going on a quest to kill some trolls, you've wasted time. That's not time. At the very least, it's not time well spent.
So I will actually go even farther to say that sometimes prep can have a pathological effect on your game.
Tell me more.
Where sometimes if you spend all this effort crafting and thinking about what you want to see play out, like the problem where you kind of think of your campaign more like a storybook you're telling, you can get really caught up in it's supposed to happen this way
Yep.
and actually end up really strong arming the players socially into doing what you're looking for. And in that scenario, because you have this sunk cost fallacy of like, oh, if they don't go here, they can't do this to do this and have that cool moment, it can actually be pathological, in my opinion.
I agree. And I realized in my own prep that I was going too far. I may have told this story on the not really a story, honestly, but I may have told this on the show before, but I realized that I was in too deep and that I was going too far when I was making flowcharts of decision trees of if they do this, arrow here, if they do that, arrow there. That is a ridiculous waste of time. That is a great example of truly time wasted because by the very nature of that, because of the time you had to take to write those, at least half of it will not be used. That's because they went the other way. That is,
I'd agree. You can definitely have a more efficient time preparing your game.
yeah, that is a ridiculous way to prepare a campaign, and I realized after doing it, I think twice, that this is just a complete waste of time. This is not going to help anyone.
Okay, I changed my mind. Fucking flowcharts.
Yeah, I told you it was
Alright.
stupid. It's a stupid way to do it. I don't know why I ever thought that was a good idea, but it was not at all. And
Maybe
yeah.
maybe it's because like some like adventure books use it because like the module writers are fundamentally at a disadvantage because they don't know who your party is.
Right,
So
true.
they're just like trying to cast a net and hope that it lands somewhere inspiring.
Yeah, I mean this was before I'd ever run a campaign out of a book. I'd never run like a Wizards module for D&D or something like that, or anything.
So maybe you're the people they find to write those then.
Well, I'm hoping someone give me a job. Yeah, I mean, but even, you know what? You go when you read a Wizards of the Coast adventure module, like a D&D module. Those were the first ones I ever ran out of a book. Was like the first campaign I ever ran out of a book was Curse of Strahd. They don't write them that way. Oh, really? Same one?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but so they're not written that way. They're not written as
No, they're
decision
not.
trees. They're just locations, and they will occasionally throw in things that'll be like, oh, if the party has Irina with them when they get here, this might happen or something like that. But they don't break it down to that granular level because that's stupid and not helpful.
My brain was on Descent into Avernus where they have like a little bit of that.
Yeah, Waterdeep Dragon Heist does it a little bit too, with the whole stupid. It's my least favorite part of the entire book, but the whole stupid rooftop chase scene that's in the third act of that campaign. But
I've run that, and I've played in that once, run it twice, and never involved that scene.
yeah, I mean, from what I hear, everyone cuts it. Like every GM I've talked to cuts that part out because it's just dumb and it doesn't. It's poorly written, to be honest with you, and it just doesn't help. I used a remix of that. I don't know if you're what's his name? I was about to say Jason Alexander, but that's the guy from Seinfeld. I can't remember his name. He runs the Alexandrian blog. He did a remix of Waterdeep Dragon Heist. That actually Justin Doc Rimbo introduced me to. It was very, very helpful, and he rearranged some plot things and made it just make more sense. And I use that to run it, but that's far afield. I would like to pitch you a question, though. Now, go ahead, Lydia. What you got?
No, I was just going to go to chat questions, but
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you have one beforehand, please go.
Yeah, pick your favorite. Go ahead.
I'm just going to start like at the beginning and then come to an end and then stop.
What a nerd.
I know, right?
Jeez.
I'm sorry, I'm being so mean to Lydia today.
I know. This is like the third time I'm getting shade here from the side.
Shots fired.
Hey, I missed you.
It's true. It's how I show my affection. I'm
You guys
like a fourth grader.
You're picking up right where you left off. I mean, it's par for the course.
Fine. No, but we've been talking about different kinds of prep, from flowcharts to world building with economy to character based, and cutting right to it. Says Tom, what is the most important core aspect of GM prep that you really cannot cut out?
Stress management.
Good kind of meta answer, but
The only vital, unskippable component to prep is getting you to a place where you are comfortable running the game. Everything else can be skipped. Not saying you always should, but it can be.
okay, all right. No, actually, I like that as an answer. That makes a lot of sense to me in a very meta sort of way. But I mean, I also think it might be different for every game. That's probably not terribly helpful, but
It's
not
true, though.
yeah. I mean, not every TTRPG handles the same way. Different systems, handle differently. So as far as like what is an indelible component of your prep, that actually does vary a little bit depending on what you're running. But
Even from session to session, it might change when you have the BBAG between a combat scene when you know the next session is going to be combat heavy to having a deeply emotional player scene.
Sure.
Even that will require different approaches, I think. What were you going to say, Nat? Sorry, I cut you off.
I was going to say it varies from group to group, too. I have some groups where, like, if I spend 5 minutes in the shower thinking about the game. They will just kind of wave their hands, create fireworks, and the session will be fun. And I have other groups where they're really looking for me to lay something in front of them for them to interact with. And knowing your group is a valuable component in lots of GMing.
Yeah, I mean, you have to communicate with them, right? That's the most important thing.
Yeah, we know. Are you trying to get me to trying to provoke me?
Anna, if you're watching, keep your finger hovering on the clip button because we need to get a Nat GIF before this is over.
But of what, Colin? Of what, Nat,
Oh.
should we get a GIF?
Well,
What is
his,
so
his
important?
winning smile.
Nat?
Well, it's important that you get reminded that in all of your GMing work and prep, you need to communicate.
Boom, got him.
Oh, nice, that little head tilt
Ooh,
there at the end.
ooh, and the little lock too going down. I like. All
Oh
right.
yeah, oh yeah.
Oh, that's a fine one. I'll say this though. I think for me, you're right, Nat. I think in the real world lived experience, the most important thing is getting to yourself to the point where you're comfortable running the game and you're not freaking out when you sit down at the session and freezing because you don't know what to do. And that how much prep that takes from person to person will differ. If you are a really skilled improviser, that may require very, very little. I don't think I'm a really skilled improviser, but I'm pretty good at it. I've known GMs who are just infinitely better at it than me. But I have done things where I've run a campaign or I've run a session based off of 3 sentences I wrote on a notebook page before that. And they were basically like scene ideas I had, and I think I actually used 2 of them. But I will say this for my part. The one part I think you absolutely need, and this might just be for the kind of games I like to run, it is the information you want the players to get in that session, which may be clues, maybe bits of clues about if they're on some kind of. I'm thinking of like I do a lot of Monster of the Week, so like mystery stuff, like clues that you want them to somehow get their hands on, or things you want them to learn about the world, or things you want them to learn about the characters they interact with, or things you want them to learn about the quest they're currently on, or the mission they're currently on, or whatever the hell it is. That is the information itself is what I need to have in my noggin. What do they have to learn this session? And my biggest tip for that is, and Lydia's heard me rant about this a few times, to never ever tie a piece of information to any person, object, or location, ever. So like, Nat, this ties into exactly what you were just talking about railroading a bit because you have the script in your head of they're supposed to go here and then do this and then that's going to happen. If you have the vitally important clue about the quest is written in a diary, in a desk drawer, in a manor house on the other side of the city, and they never go there, it should not be the case that they never get that information. Because that's you've cut them off from something important that maybe they needed to learn because you tied it to a very specific object in a specific location. Instead, I like to just know what the information I want them to get is, have it in my head, have it written down on a piece of paper, and then find a place where it makes sense to introduce it. And typically it's they have an idea for how they want to get that information, and I say, that's a cool idea, and I'll find a way to make it work. Yes, the information's on a diary in a desk drawer on the other side of the city, but also that information could be had from capturing but like a bunch of local gang members and interrogating somebody and get the exact same information. And that way it's player focused, it's whatever they want to do, we just find a way to work with that. And then the only time I really start to tie bits of information to locations, objects, or places is if I actually am trying to steer them in that direction, but you can only go so far with that before you get into railroading, so you have to be very, very careful about it. So that's really that's how I look at it. What do I want them to learn in this session? And while still trying to be flexible enough that if they want to just jerk around and have fun and get tacos, like let them do that too. It's fine. Or I'll find a way to get that information in the food court when they're getting tacos. There'll be an NPC there or something like that. But that's my take on it. You just having to have your clues, your information, your facts about the situation. Know what that is. Actually, maybe a way to put it is, what reveals do you want to make? What reveals should happen in this
Yeah.
session? And then do it that way.
I've heard of this being referred to as floating clues before,
Yes.
as a structure where you write down clues and just look for excuses of where to hand them out.
Mhm.
And that is how I like to phrase it. You're looking for excuses to reveal the next thing
Yes, that's a
that is
great way to look at it.
appropriately structured. Yeah.
Yeah. No. And I got that. I can't take credit for that. I got that from Mike Shea.
Oh, so
Who?
did I.
Oh, nice. Yes. Who wrote the lazy GM? What is it?
Yep.
I can't remember what it's called now. I feel bad,
Lazy
Mike.
Dungeon Masters, something.
Yeah. I got it. Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master was the one I got it from. But yeah, that's exactly what he does. It's have the clues just out there in the world and find a reason. I like an excuse to just introduce it.
And this gets towards something that I like to talk about when it comes to prep, and that is that prepping towards usability. And that is about having a mind towards how likely am I going to be able to implement this into my game. And this can be happen. There are two different ways this can happen. It can be I'm reasonably certain this will come to pass, so I can prepare for this circumstance. And it can also be I'm reasonably certain that I will be able to use this somewhere at some point. So there are narrow ones, like I know that they're probably at some point going to stop this lich's spell that will kill every person in the planet because they know about it, and that would end the campaign, so they're motivated.
And that would be bad.
So when that happens,
yeah.
when that happens, like feel free to prepare the monologue or something, them calling for their revenge or whatever creatures they summon, because that's very likely to happen. It's narrow, but it's pretty certain. And then there's like why, like I should prepare a blacksmith NPC that I can put somewhere because that has a reasonable chance of coming up. It's very vague where they land, what exactly they sell. That's all up in the air, but it's very likely to be usable. And I think that's a really strong metric for what you spend your time on.
That's a great way to look at it. Lydia, what do you think? What is the thing you can't cut?
The thing I can't cut is what I've been more centering in on is what is each character trying to get out of the next session, and how can I make it happen.
So finding out what they want.
Yeah.
And then using
it's something we do on our session zeros. It's always the whole, what do you want out of the game? What are your expectations? But I feel like successful individual sessions should also have that question as one of the very core ones. Sure, it's not always possible that you can equally shine the spotlight on each and every single character in a large cast, but I think every player should come away with a session with some form of highlight, with some form of personal highlight, even if it's not a big moment, then a lead up for something, or something that gets them excited for next time, or a hint even, or just a small scene that is deep and personal. It's player based for me at this point. And from there I try and develop how to do that with plot, with NPCs, with items, and take that kind of as my lead.
I mean, I've read of that as exactly what you're talking about, as being actually a great way to plan a whole campaign. In your session 0, learn who these people are, the characters, and find out what they want. And the way I think I read this, I can't remember, it was one of the D&D developers that said this, but find out how they want to change the world. What would the world look like if they had a magic wand? What kind of world do they want to live in? Find out how they want to change the world. Now throw roadblocks in front of them to keep it from happening. There's your campaign. Right there. And then give them challenges to overcome to see their vision realized. That's at least, that's not everything, but that is a seed of creating a compelling campaign. It's working toward their goals and aspirations and how they want to make the world a better place, or if they're assholes, a worse place. But yeah, I mean, from there, with very little actual like individual plotting, and not having to worry about the issue of buy-in, because if you have your big story already written, what do you do if they just don't care about it? You immediately find out what they care about. What do they want to see, and then run with that. I think that's a great way to approach it.
So we were, in answering this question, sort of touching upon the question that Red White Roleplay asked earlier on, the certain kinds of session who need different types of approach in GM prep, and also do certain sessions need more or less prep? Big boss fights, first sessions, shopping episodes.
I hate
Do you
shopping
approach them?
episodes.
Do you approach them differently at all, Nat?
So the one that jumps out to me is the first session, which is like one of the starting a campaign, getting the percolated ideas for the strength situation is actually something that I will spend hours on. It's one of the few times, usually the only time in a campaign where I straight up go, I'm going to devote an evening to this. So that one definitely jumps out to me because I spend exponentially more on that than anything else in the campaign. Besides that, it's we so like we have in our streaming communities like the term, like we have the beach episode, we have the shopping episode, we got the bus fight episode, we got all these things, and I don't think of them like that. I think about them like, is this an episode at rest where the players are going out and finding what they want to do? Is this an episode through a path where they're going through a path of rooms and I need to put things in front of them, like usually dungeons are along a path episodes for me. Is this one big moment episodes where there's something big asked of them and they need to consider it, whether through fighting or through talking or through deliberation? Those are how I structure them in my head, and those do have different amounts, but I can't easily be like, yeah, the beach episode is that one. Sure, it'll more often be one of those, but it's not quite that cut and dry for me. And I'm sorry if that's not a very helpful answer for you.
I feel
It's
like though
probably not.
I feel like though you sort of have answered it, because at the base level the answer to that question is yes. Certain kinds of session do need more or less prep.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's helpful to you, Red White Roleplay, I will go down the ones you listed. Boss fights, that for me tends to be a big one in terms of prep. If I know that they're getting to, the BBG, if I know that they're likely facing an important rival that they have built up animosity with over the course of many sessions and over the course of a campaign, yes, I'm going to put a lot of thought into that. That's probably going to be, next to the first session, probably the one I think the most about, because there's nothing worse for me, and God, I've been there before, than, I know it's hackneyed that, your big villain gets some big monologue before the fight starts, but a lot of times I found players are actually expecting that to happen. Of course, you do sometimes
I
get
love that shit.
yeah, but I mean, I have had the one where it's like the big guy shows up and they're like, "I shoot him." I'm like, okay, well, so guess we're not talking. But it's so tropey that it's almost expected. So I have totally got to the point where they're at a boss fight, and I realized, like, what does this guy sound like? I haven't even thought about what he sounds like. He's been this background boogeyman. What's his voice like? What's the cadence of his speech?
Yeah.
What is he going to say to people who are trying to stop him? And that's stuff that now I do take the time to think about. And typically, what digs can I throw at the, at the party? Did you have a point on that, Nat?
Oh, it's one of those places where I feel like our not our genre, our form of media versus like a movie or a book where you can spend time with the villain, see from their perspective, figure out the way they tick without actually having to expose them to potential death by party members is a lot stronger. So it's hard to get characterization on villains that the party just wants dead. Like it's a problem that exists in our medium, but not in a lot of others.
True, yeah. I mean, I spend time... I am actually partial to doing very cinematic style narration where I will cut away and show the players something happening off screen.
Oh yeah, definitely do that more.
I love doing that. It's become like almost a trope of my GMing of the I did it in 2 different campaigns, and I just love doing this kind of scene. But the off screen phone conversation scene where you're hearing someone talk to the bad guy on the phone and you can't hear him. You only hear one side of a conversation, but you're getting information via that way. That you are, it's just pure dramatic irony. You can't interact with it. There's nothing you can do about it. I'm just feeding you information. But rather than doing it in a third-person style. I'm giving it to you in this kind of, in-character way. I just did that in the last episode, or the end of the first episode of Achtung Cthulhu on Encounter Roleplay. I used that same kind of scene again. I love doing that. And get them to know the villain while they still can't interact with them. Another trick for that, I think I took this one from, I think it's Matt Colville's idea, but the Emperor from Star Wars, seeing you tease the villain by showing a lesser villain, a peon of the main villain, talking to, like, the classic talking to a hologram scene.
Yeah.
It's Darth Vader talking to the Emperor. You can do this in a fantasy setting with all kinds of magic and shit, where you're getting to know that villain while they're still off screen, but you know that they're out there, and you get to see them in conversation, but you can't actually kill them yet. That's a fun way to do it.
My favorite trick for getting characterization on the villain is to have them hire the party before they know they're the villain.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
It's because suddenly there's a face to them. They know how they talk. They know what they're like. They might have already formed opinions. Like, oh, I knew they were. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's my favorite shit. Anytime, if you're ever in a game I'm running and someone hires you, be super suspicious.
Where did that happened in a campaign I did recently? That they the party I did that with, I think it was in Waterdeep Dragon Heist, where they got hired by one of the main villains in that, Jarl Axel, the character Jarl Axel in Dragon Heist. They got hired by him, and they said from now on they were going to get a contract writer with everyone they work with. Like, you have to sign here and say that you're not a murderer before we will work for you.
Yeah, I had the Castellanters hire them for that first mission when I ran Dragon Heist.
Oh, they're bastards. Yeah.
Oh, and they immediately went, "Oh, so we're rescuing your fuckboy." That was the player response. It was great.
But yeah, out of the rest of those that were listed, first session, I agree with you, Nat. That's where I think probably the most. The knowing what my spark is that's going to ignite this powder keg that creates the whole adventure. Boss fights, absolutely. That's going to be high prep. Shopping episode, nope. Probably no prep, to be honest with you. Almost none. I don't know about you, Lydia. What do you think?
Yeah. I'm more and more when people want to go shopping, it's like, yeah, sure, you get it. Oh, can I get this? Can I get this? Yeah, sure, whatever. And you can sometimes see the confusion because they were expecting bartering and they were expecting having to go through 3 different shops. And I'm like, if someone thinks that's fun, that's fine. I don't want to take that away from anyone. And I will give them a scene with a shopkeeper if they're really super here for it. But yeah, the more actual campaigns I'm doing, the less I care about inventory management and how much gold pieces do you actually have. I do prep magic items because I like making them player focused. I like making them special things that are meant for a specific player. But it's not fun finding that in a shop, is it? It's something that would be rewarded during the campaign. That being said, I do have, with the Home Guards game, some players that aren't here as often, or some players that just want to min-max, and again, that's fine. So if they want to sell an item that they don't use and get a new one, then yeah, sure, we'll do that in the city, and you could just go to a magic shop. But I don't think I've ever had a shopping episode because
they're boring.
I don't hate myself that much.
They're boring. I hate shopping episodes. I will say this though, kind of unrelated, but just this is my plea from me to you, GMs in the world. I almost want to add a session. No, not you. I don't think you've ever done this. But I almost want to add a segment to this show that's just like annoying things I'm begging you to break. Stop making all of your shopkeepers assholes. I don't know who decided at one point that all shopkeepers are assholes in like fantasy worlds and stuff. Like everyone, it reminds me of the dude from Skyrim, the jerk guy that, yeah, come on in. I don't know, the jerk in Whiterun. The idea that every shopkeeper is a dick and is gonna like haggle with you over everything and try to upcharge you and just like stop, please. Can we have like just normal transactions and not have to go through all that crap? It's just annoying.
I genuinely have. That was when I just lost it. When I just lost interest in a campaign I'd been in for ages. I'm like, okay, this is literally the last straw. This is it. I am done with this GM because that is exactly what he did for
Every
every
shopkeeper just
Yeah.
was a jerk.
What I have done for my home guards game is create the Guild of Harnessers, so they basically will be able to make cheaper magic items if you bring them the crafting material, so to say. So I have a lot of players who aren't in the online Twitter community, who aren't into the whole storytelling first thing that I say we as if
The royal
I
we.
speak for the whole community. But there's definitely been role playing first, storytelling first. That is the recent trend.
Yeah.
And I do have a couple of wargamers. I do have a couple of min-maxers and power gamers, and that's fine. And for them, there's that option because it feels a bit more video gamey, and they get a little bit more behind it. But at the same time, when they tell me, because they can sink their teeth into what are the items, what will I need for that, I can make okay for this that definitely needs it's a magic item of clothing, so you'll probably need the skin or the hide from a creature that is magic resistant. So that gives me an idea of who they will want to fight at some point, which monster can they harvest to get these properties, and that often gives me adventure hooks and plot hooks for the Monster of the Week episode in D&D.
Done well, it can. And done well, it can be good world building. Because there's the thing about world building. World building is a lot less valuable than good ways to have your players learn about your world. Actually having the players have knowledge in their noggins about the world is really great. You having knowledge of the world in your noggin, a lot less useful. So ways like that where you can tie world building into what they want is really powerful.
Oh, can I do my appeal to GMs worldwide in that regard?
Oh,
do it.
And I'm going to ask Nat to do one later now because this is now a thing we do. So yeah.
Yeah. Stop expecting your players to write every single piece of lore down and then be able to remember every single piece of lore and punish them when they don't, because we all have lives. We aren't our characters. We play them once a week and then we stop being them unless you're Anna and write constant letters in character, but that's a different thing. So if they're like, oh, what was that guy's name again? Don't be a dick about it. Just give them the name. Or, oh, where were we meant to go? What's this thing again? Well, you should have paid attention.
If you ever mutter the sentence, well, you should have paid attention, for something that you can be a little bit of a jerk if it's something that literally just happened in that session. But if it's anything outside of the current session you're playing and you're doing well, you should have paid attention, you're a dick. And you don't want people to enjoy your game, apparently. You want to just punish them for not paying attention to your big, pretty world. You're an asshole. Don't ever do that. I had a GM tell me that in session 15 of something about a world. Yeah, it was a campaign I didn't enjoy very much. But it was like session 15, and it was before the campaign started. They had given out a little primer on the world. It was like, wouldn't give me the information I was asking for. He's like, I put it in the primer I gave you before we started this campaign. I'm like, that was like 6 months ago. Why are you fighting me on this? Like, just tell me the thing. It's ugh.
That's horrendous.
Yeah, well, he was horrendous.
That's fair. We've all had the horrendous GM.
Do you have? Oh, that's always part of the show too, Nat. Don't worry, we'll have the GM.
So I will say, a little comment on the you should remember this. Your players are their characters for what? Up at most 5 hours a week. I don't think normal people play more often than that. Your characters are themselves 24/7. While Jimmy, who's playing, Trogdor, has forgotten why we're going to the Mystic Cave. Trogdor! Well, they've forgotten why we're going to the Mystic Cave. Trogdor hasn't. Tell Trogdor.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense that you'd be like, well, you've suddenly forgotten because you are not you for 100% of the hours.
Yeah, no, that's just a GM whose pride is hurt because people weren't totally taken in by all the lore that they dropped. Stop being a dick and just tell them. It's not that big of a deal.
At the
Just when
same
people get
time,
caught up in like it's unfair if I remind you, you have to remember because it's a tactic thing. And it's like no, it's
No.
logical that you remind them.
Yeah, totally.
at the same time, I will say players show some level of appreciation for the amount of
Yeah.
world building and effort a GM has to put in. If you didn't get what was happening because you're constantly on your phone, or if if you do it in a kind of dickish way, people will take note of that and will possibly get snappy. I may be talking about myself here because that literally happened to me a couple of sessions back when a player who has a habit of doing that, and well, I'm not in this scene. Well, I guess it's not important then. Had yeah, yeah, we've had a talk, but that was that was a fairly emotional moment that came up, and it was connected to her backstory, and she was there witnessing it, but because she wasn't actively talking, just looking at a phone and then
Wait, her
completely
character was
spacing
in the
out.
scene?
Yeah, yeah.
That's even
it's a thing.
worse. It wasn't even
Yeah.
like she was off screen. She was in the scene, but just wasn't paying attention because there weren't presently words coming out of her mouth.
And it was literally then, huh? Sorry, I didn't listen. I'm like,
Internal screaming intensifies. That's
Yep.
the give and take, and that is one of the reasons why I did for one of my campaigns. I felt weird doing this because I'd never done anything like this before, but it became an issue when that kind of thing was happening a lot, and we actually sat down. We had a session 0.5 where we sat down and said, let's write out a list of what our expectations of each other are. Basically, what is your expectations of me as your GM? What are my expectations of you as players? And let's make them reasonable things that are not over the top that we can all agree on. And one of those simple ones was, yes, please give earnest attention even when you're not in a scene, because it not only will make the game richer, because if you are aware of things that are happening, it colors how you can interact with the characters afterward. If you know what happened, even though you weren't there, it gives you great ways to approach that character afterward about how they're feeling about what happened and stuff like that. And it also saves us some of the time of having to repeat things later on that we could be using for other things. And then, in return, the GM agrees, I will, like Nat just said, I will feed you information back if it's totally reasonable that you should know it at any point. I mean, Lydia, this came up with you and I the other day in Song of the Deep, when the episode that ended with Katrin in Bastion's head. And the first thing I did was ask you, was that Katrin? Because there's no reason it would be a mystery. If it was her, Bastion would know. He knows his sister's voice. So there's no reason that should be a mystery. And of course, you being a good GM, we're like, yeah, that was Katrin. We don't have to, it's understanding in the meta, maybe it's a mystery, but to the player, there's no mystery there at all. It makes that information readily ascertainable.
Yeah, you were like, oh, did I remember on stream? And I made it no, you don't know on stream because, audience.
Yeah.
But then, literally a second once we were off stream, yeah, it's Katrin.
Yeah, it's totally Katrin. Of course. Yeah. Obviously.
All right. Speaking of Katrin, who is Anna, what game or experience changed the way you prep for sessions? Was there a specific game that helped you break out of over-prepping is her question.
Nat, pitch that to you.
So I'm actually gonna answer the question the exact wrong way.
Yeah, because you isn't. Oh yeah, I remember we had that talk at the end of Tips, Tricks, and Tuesday that you started prepping a little bit more.
So
or something like that.
One of the reasons that I started becoming a really improv-oriented game master, besides the fact that I really liked improv, was because it let me run more crap. So I was at one point I was I ran 9 sessions in 7 days. It was just ridiculous. I was doing 0 minutes of prep per session, and what I realized is you just can't have. Oh, actually, myself, I can't have that many fish in the fire.
Why are you putting fish in the fire?
To cook them.
In the fire.
Amateurs.
Okay, all right. You're
So
muted, Lydia.
for me, it was that realization that um, there were still a couple games that I was hyped for and I was thinking about in my free time, and that was acting as prep at that time. And like, oh, I need to not have more shit going on than the amount of games that I'm excited for. And that's truly what it is, because as far as prep as stress management, I didn't need anything. But insofar as prep for, I want to have really good sessions every time. It needs to be the ones that I'm really got the spark for.
Thank you, just another
And
guy named
like,
Harry, for that follow, by the way. That's the greatest name I've seen on Twitch in a while. Thanks, Harry. Sorry, Nat, you were saying.
You're fine. So I answered the question entirely wrong, because it was how I started prepping more again, and it was not a specific session, but many sessions. So sorry.
You're a rebel.
We know.
Lydia, well, we already know you're perfect and never had this problem, right? So I guess you don't have
No,
it more.
that's wow.
I'm kidding.
No, I will say I was always very stressed. I was always over prepping because it made me feel less anxious. But
Over
I have,
prepping if it makes you feel less anxious.
yeah.
Frankly.
But the thing is, I've never had a problem dropping things if it's not working. That's because I've had 10 years of tour guiding beforehand, where I'm telling a story, and when the next room is free in the Abbey, I have to move on. I have to drop something and come to a normal conclusion. Or then with the ghost tours in Edinburgh, when I ran out of time because there were so many questions during one story and we had such a nice little rep, I have to make another story shorter. I was always forced to be flexible in that regard. And that translated well into GMing, but I was always too scared to even start GMing until literally 5 years ago. I was
Wow.
playing before that, but I was not wanting to GM because responsibility. But the prepping and it wasn't flowchart bad, but I did always try and think with when they go here, what could they do there? When they do this, could they do there? But I never. I hope. It didn't. I didn't force it on them. But I had one session which was literally 2 sentences prep. I don't know why. I don't know what made me go, fuck it. I might not have had time. I might have forgotten. And I do remember that being a really bloody good session. And that kind of took that pressure off. And then looking through my notes from there, because I have a Google Doc of all those 60 sessions from the Guards game at home. And like I said, sometimes it's a page, sometimes it's 2 sentences, sometimes it's 3 pages. But I did notice, I do know now, that very often the no prep ones are actually better for it. Doesn't mean, that's a standard rule, no prep is better, but that was certainly a moment of, I can do it that way and it still works.
Yeah. I think I had a similar thing of course, the flowcharts were a big moment when I was like, this is too much.
So when the lightning started striking nearer to your house, did you realize that's when you need to change your ways?
I'm sorry, what?
So when the lightning started striking nearer to your house, is that when you realized you need to change your ways?
Yeah. It was probably more like when it was 4 o'clock in the morning and I was still staring at my monitor in Roll20, and I realized if you look at the number of hours I have logged on Roll20, it's disgusting. How like I had to tell my players this later on, like, you guys don't even know like the hours I've been spending doing this, and some of that's because that was a Roll20 campaign where I'm putting in maps and tokens and all that crap, and now I don't really do any of that except for that one game. I still play that game. I'm still with that campaign's been going on for like 3 years. I still play that game with those guys, and that's the only campaign where I do any of that. And that's just because that's what they have grown to expect. So I still do it. But everything else now, I'm mostly theater of the mind and all that, so I'm just not doing that. But the flowcharts was a moment when I realized this is stupid and that I'm wasting my time. But then, Lydia, I think it's actually a really similar thing to what you said. It's when I started throwing out a lot of that and just getting comfortable being uncomfortable, getting comfortable going into a session not knowing everything and not having plot points planned out, and then it still turns out good, that's when I started to realize that I don't need to do this. There's no reason for me to keep torturing myself doing all of this plotting when it can work just as well when I just listen. I think that's really what it was. When I just listen to them and hear what they want and try to give them what they're asking for. And if I can't immediately in the story give them what they want, throw up a roadblock in front of them toward what they want and then make them overcome it. And there's a session right there. Immediately. You can do that on the micro level. And that really changed everything. And then, the other big thing that really changed things was running games that were not Dungeons and Dragons. Because D&D, particularly if you're running modules, lends itself more to that kind of plotting. But there are other TTRPGs that just have a different ethos. And the big one for me, this will surprise you, was Monster of the Week. Where it was like mind-blowing to me when the first time I read the sentence, play to see what happens. That's the ethos of Monster of the Week, and like a lot of PBTA, that is the idea behind the game, where a Monster of the Week mystery, which is normally, for me, they're supposed to be one session, but you know me, they're like 3 to 4 normally. They're 3 pages long, maybe. And all they are a list of locations, a list of NPCs, and a list of monsters. And then the countdown timer clocking up to what kind of catastrophe will happen if the players don't intervene. That's it. That's all they give you, and then from that, you make a session out of that. And I realized that that's a really good model for plotting. That's a very simple model telling you it gives you the stakes of what's going to happen, which is so much better than having a plot. Knowing the stakes is even better. If the players don't get involved, this will happen, then it'll get worse, then it'll get worse, then it'll get worse, and then it'll consume the whole world at the end. So as the players go into that session, as they go in to start that mystery, what they're up against on the grand scale of things. And as they continue to make steps or fuck up, you tick that closer and closer. And you make things move in the background when they're not on screen. And I just found that worked. That was a very simple method that doesn't require me to have all of this big, detailed information about stuff. It's just a few basic ideas. Monster of the Week, for example, uses, and I think PBTA, the original Apocalypse World does this too. When it gives you an NPC, it doesn't tell you their life story. It doesn't give them a character sheet. It says, this is a person, and they break them down into categories. So like a bystander, this is I can't remember what it's called, but like their motivation is to interfere and get in the way with the investigators. So when that character appears, they can talk however they want. Their voice can be whatever the hell you want it is. They can be basically anybody. You can make the character up on the fly. All you have to do is know that this person is going to try to get in their way and make it work from there. With minions, it's like this person is a Renfield, which is my favorite one. Their motivation is they're going to try to lead people to the monster. That's their motivation. So when this guy's on screen, that's what he's trying to do. Always working toward that simple goal. And just that method of doing it just worked. It worked way better, made for more interesting sessions, made for more player-driven action, and it just made for a better game. So that really broke me of it. So I guess the answer is finding low prep ways to do it that still work and work really well. That broke me of it. And now I'm a very, very low prep GM. Maybe too much, but I prep very, very little these days. I've completely swung the other way, so that's good. I mean, it went from, we're talking 8 to 10 hours a week of prep.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You should be paid for that kind of work, Colin.
I know. To now, I'd say half an hour to an hour of prep. That's about it I do nowadays. If that. And that's usually just reading over. Right now, I mean, I'm using a module for like Octon Cthulhu on Encounter Roleplay, and I read through the module what they're likely to encounter that day, and that's my prep. That's pretty much it.
You know, my favorite way to run a module is read it once all the way through before you run the campaign, close the book, and never open it again.
Okay. Then just
see what you remember.
Go it off memory.
Yeah.
Have you done that?
Oh, yeah.
Look at this man. Of course he has.
What module? I'm curious.
I did that with Tomb of Annihilation.
Oh,
Yeah.
Isn't that fairly like dungeony? And
Yeah. So I will say I cheated a little bit because when they got to the final dungeon, I used it for the dungeon again. But besides that, getting there, all that random stuff, the guides, the Lost City of Amu, I used some of the art. That was about it.
oh yeah, and
It was fun.
Cadence in chat mentions Quietus, which we ran on this channel a few weeks ago. And that's another thing I think maybe helped was playing those games where it's baked into the system that you can't know what's going to happen before it starts.
Yeah.
That it's those purposely pick up games that are low prep like Quietus. That'll break you of all your bad prep habits if you play that a few times. And I would probably suggest that GMs who want to get better at running low prep and improv games play some of those games. Try it. That's a great training method
Also,
for your brain, I think.
GMless games often have a lot of these aspects to them. I think like Fiasco or Dialect or like Firebrands. These are great games that have it. They give you prompts to figure out what's going on, but it's collectively, so you can't just be like it's like this. You literally aren't allowed to. It's great.
Yeah. The collaborative aspect, very helpful.
so you mentioned Monster of the Week with the bystanders with the monsters, and then just half a page of basic plot, which refers quite nicely to how we prep overarching plots, problems, scenarios for players to solve while keeping the gameplay flexible. Do you plot for multiple endings, or do you never plot the ending? Was one of the questions.
You want to start with that one, Lydia?
I usually do, general outline, a general. They go here, something happens at the end, maybe this, like a couple of sentences, and then see where it goes, because it's again never advisable to create the story without the players. That it happens while playing, and at the same time I like it when bad guys, monsters, whatever, when they have a life of their own, when they have a story of their own. But to see that play out again, I like to keep that parallel. So yeah, if that sentence changes, then so be it. If it doesn't, find a couple of callbacks or something. For the new Song of the Deep season, I had absolutely no idea what was going to happen, who was going to be a bad guy, just anything for the first 3 episodes. That's just been sort of crystallized, over the last 2-3 weeks, and
Yeah, we only got our bad guy last session, pretty much.
Yeah. I had him the session before, but the first time I thought, this could be actually it, was the campfire story that Sarah told.
Wait, you had the story before you had that was going to be the main villain? Yeah, interesting.
Fascinating.
Because that felt like a set piece that you were teeing up, but it wasn't at the time.
Yeah, because you kind of go back and then make it work, like kind of, tie it in. Same for Phoebe's memory coming back, like that. I had that. I think I wrote to you excitedly at 4 a.m. in the morning. I finally know what the fucking memory is.
Yes, you did exactly that.
I did that, and we had that memory coming up in the very first episode of season 1 half a year ago.
Yep.
I didn't know what it was until that moment 2 weeks ago. So but it kind of fits. Looking at it, I think the really tricky part, but also super rewarding part of GMing is when you can make it look as if it had been planned all along. And I think a big moment for your GM development is also when you realize that all the GMs you admire do exactly the same thing and also had no idea where they were going at the very beginning. It's like that moment when you grow up that your parents were also just floundering half the time,
doing the best they can.
And panickedly calling their own parents at 2 in the morning at worst.
Wait, you mean every parent isn't an expert? Lydia.
I hate to break it to you right now, Nat.
You really want to do this on stream? I mean, this sounds like we might be dredging up some deep stuff here.
Oh God.
But you're right though, Lydia. That's for me. Oh yeah, for me. I've told my players this before. Like, and I love that moment when they're like, "You didn't plan that." No, the
Good shit.
I love that, but I mean, I mean this when I just Monster of the Week, it really taught me this too because it encourages you to do this. I just do things and I find out what it means later. I throw out breadcrumbs that I don't know what they mean. One of my favorite ways to do this in Dungeons and Dragons specifically was at the beginning of the quest or throughout. I would do this sometimes. I love the trinket table I think it's in the player's handbook. Do you remember the trinket table? That's like D100, just random trinkets that all sound like they have an interesting story to them. Like, I had one character that started with a jar full of human teeth. What the fuck is this? That's got a story behind it. I just don't know what it is yet. And I used to love to have them. I love to have them use the trinket table at the beginning, give them all some weird little object, and then later on find out what it means. Why is that significant to the story that we're doing? And I've done that with. They go searching for something. I think I did this in Waterdeep Dragon Heist. They go searching for something. They're digging through an alleyway, going through trash, and I'll just say roll on the trinket table, and they get some random item. I think that was the one that was basically like a Rubik's cube that they found, that had like a void space inside of it. What the hell's that mean? I don't know. I'll tie it in later. And streaming games has helped this a lot because I can go back and watch the VOD and see what I said before, because sometimes I don't even remember these things. What breadcrumbs did I throw out? And then, oh, that'd be interesting. What if that came up again? Maybe we can work with that. And then you do that enough, it makes it look like you've had this intricate woven plot from the very beginning, and you were just making it up as you go along.
Also, because very often players don't watch the VOD.
Yeah,
so if you do throw out some item that then never comes up again, chances are most people won't remember it anyway.
Yeah,
it's no big deal usually.
Oh yeah, it's confirmation bias. For everything that comes back up again, there's a million other things you threw out that never came back up again, and that's fine.
I'll also say that as a GM, writing down the things you do, I find infinitely more helpful than writing down the things you plan to do.
Oh, yeah.
You make an NPC, write their name down. You have something that you do want to come back to, write it down. Like, it takes a half a second. Do it while a player's rolling an attack or something. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
I do it.
With your notes after the session, not before.
Yes. Yeah. I would go back and write a quick couple paragraphs summary after. I don't do this much anymore, but I used to do that. I would just type up what happened. But with NPCs specifically, though, Nat, I do that where if I introduce a new random NPC I just made up, because sometimes players just latch on to an NPC for some fucking reason, like someone you just made up, and they find them really cool, and now they will die for them. I write down their name, and I write down their name, and I write down a note about what they sound like, so that I can at least get the voice the same. If you're a GM that does character voices,
smart.
Yeah,
because I definitely forget character voices sometimes.
I do it by casting them as an actor. That's how I always do character voices.
See, I can barely name any actors. I'm horrible at that. That's not what my brain's good
or
at.
A character. If it's a character you know from fiction, like this shopkeeper, Bill sounds like Gandalf, and I'll do it that way, and that's my note for later on.
That helps.
Yeah.
That was actually because I normally I'm quite diligent when it comes to writing important things down as I make them up. I didn't do that for Zara's brother, because that's smart when the whole Gunhammer business is literally tied to him. So I had to go rewatch just to figure out where is it? How did I name this dude? And I found it fairly quickly.
Did you survive the Gunhammer Wars? Did it touch you?
It will come to its final chapter on Monday. So, yeah.
Well,
anyway,
what's your approach to that, Nat? Yeah.
What about you, Nat? Yeah, please save us from Gunhammer talk.
So I'm thinking about the overarching plots and problems and shit, and I just make problems. Like, I don't try to plan for how the endings could go. I don't try to ordain or preordain how the players might react to them. I'd just be like, okay, some asshole's gonna crash this flying city into the ground and try to invade it with an army. They'll figure out a way to solve it, or they won't. Either way, it's a great story.
Fair. I mean,
And
complete failure
I
is
mean,
also
and
an
then
option.
and then a little bit of thought goes into like, okay, how are they setting that up? How are they getting to the point where they can do that? And usually I'll maybe try to pepper in details about that, or if the players aren't in the right place, right time, maybe I don't. Like, it can be a surprise. But I am a big fan of just making knots and don't try to tell the players how to untie them.
Mm. So that's kind of like what I was talking about
Especially when
earlier.
they get
Just throw
more
problems in front of
powerful.
them, right?
Yeah, especially when they get more powerful, like in whatever system you're playing, and they have more ways to unfuck a situation. Like, especially like I've run enough tier 3 D&D that I know I can just be like, all right, let's just throw half the monster manual at them and see what they do.
Mm.
They'll be fine. They're level 17.
I've
That
never
was
played anyone that high level, honestly.
well, one. But
It's fun.
one of my favorite sessions I did with my guards at home is literally they were in the basement of the magic school where they keep all the monsters and creatures they are, either experimenting with for magic items or anything. And I literally just numbered the rooms and would then just roll to see what page in the monster manual that would be in the room they opened.
That could go
That's fun.
bad, couldn't it?
Well, obviously, I would re-roll if it was like a level 20
Terrask,
creature for yeah. But that worked out really well in the end. That
kinda
was
fun.
actually genuinely fun, and I told them that as well, which for them was super thrilling because they are like, "Oh fuck, we have no okay, cool," because it was like,
Try
the
that
GM
sometime.
isn't holding our hand for this one because Lydia doesn't want us to die. Um, you know what? I think that was my personal revenge after they completely ignored my hand holding the previous episode because they were all drunk as hell, including me. But and we actually had our first character death because I had planned a infiltration sneaky thing for a tribe of orcs that had taken up spot in a cave that they needed to go to. And instead of doing the sneaky thing, even though it was very clear that it was a large tribe of orcs, you're not going to survive this, they decided to just charge in and fight. Like,
They went Rambo.
this, okay, so we're doing this.
Hamilton counter 1. I'm sorry, Nat, did you have a point on that?
No, I was just being the charge.
Oh, I thought you wanted to say something before that, but
No. Although I did. I had something I want to say about how you said all of the GMs you admire are like secretly just writing sexy goblin on the inside of the GM screen and just off the cuff, and they just do crazy stuff. I will put in a plea that it feels really good when the players are like, oh, I thought you planned that. That dragon I thought was totally like a culminating arc in my character's development, not like some random thing you chucked at us to symbolize it was colder now. It was a white dragon. But like, lift the veil on occasion. Just like, be okay being honest that you're just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks on occasion. Yeah, that you come off less like a wizard. I'm sorry. It's fine. Trust me.
is this your plea? This
But
is your plea
it's
to all
honest.
GMs?
Yeah, it's. Oh no, that's a different one.
Oh,
It's
cool.
honest, and it tells them that it builds more reasonable expectations for what GMing is, and I think that's a beautiful thing.
I
And maybe
agree.
I'm a little collectivist thinking with these things.
No, I totally agree, Nat. Like, I don't like. This is one of my GM types that drive me nuts. I don't like the. I've had different words for this GM, but the monolithic GM, the GM with mystique, the GM that wants you to be sucked into their spider web and maintain this kind of aura that they are above the fray and kind of above it all. And this is where I side with Charlie a little bit, that in that sense you are just another player. You're not. I don't agree with Charlie fully on that point because you do have a fundamentally different role. But don't try to make all that weird space between you and the players. You're also just another person at the table here to have fun, and it's okay to tell them, yeah, I made that shit up. That's fine. Like I was, I mean, honestly, sometimes that just makes them more impressed when they're like, you made that up. So if you really want to feel good about yourself, that's actually another way to go about it. But
My visceral favorite one is when they go, I can't wait to find out who's under the mask next session. No, I just go, me too.
I know, right?
Just like, yeah, I don't know either yet. We'll figure it out.
Well, so let me answer this question as far as I mean, I think overarching plots, problems, scenarios. To be honest with you, it might be one sentence, in terms of, but I think of it as by the time this campaign is over, they will have had to have done this if they want to be victorious over. So if I have if I know that the threat to the world is like in my Chronomancy campaign, the one I ran for 2.5 years, the threat to the world is that there is a tiefling empire from 200 years ago that is going to come in from the past and conquer the world. They're going to. It was time travel. Yeah. It was. What's that?
Is it Belturth?
It was. Yeah.
Yeah.
It actually was Belturth. Yeah. Yeah. There's a whole. Yeah. They're gonna come into the. They're coming in from the past and they're gonna conquer the world. So for that to not happen, they have to find some way for that to not happen. They have to find a way to make them not come in from the past and destroy the world. That is my entire overarching scenario. What happens in between at the macro level? Let's find out. I have no idea. But I just have that one sentence, tops one paragraph idea of what the world looks like. And this is really the very kind of Monster of the Week countdown timer idea. What does the world look like if they don't do anything? If they stayed at home and decided to not go adventuring, what happens? The world is conquered by tieflings. That's what it is. So as far as like the big overarching plot, that's about it. That's all I really do. Plot multiple endings. I never plot endings. In that, I guess I have sort of just there. The ending is that the tieflings conquer the world. That's one. If they do nothing, but of course they're going to do something. So, or otherwise, why are we here? What are we here to play? So, no, I don't plot endings at all. That is totally, other than that basic one, that it's just play to see what happens. I do plot, and Colin broken record time. I do plot beats. I'm a firm believer that every session should end on a beat. It should end on a place that is dramatically important and interesting. There are few exceptions to this. Sometimes you want a session to end in stasis where everyone's comfortable and happy because they've just saved the day or saved the town or whatever, and let's just enjoy that for a second. And then those are great, especially if you know that there's going to be maybe a little bit of a layoff in play in between. Like, let's get to a nice stasis point that we can pick back up later. That's good for episodic type campaigns. But for the most part, end on a beat. When I say end on a beat, I really mean end on a cliffhanger. Find a cliffhanger because it keeps them coming back. It makes them wonder, oh my god, what's going to happen next? They can't wait for next session. It'll be in their brain all the time. Who was it that fired the bullet at the end? Who was that guy? Was somebody hit? It was one of us hit? Was the NPC hit? Are we all okay? Like, do that. It is one of the simplest tricks I've ever learned that just works and makes you... It's just good storytelling. It makes them want to come back for more. But as for what that beat will be, usually going into a session, I don't know. I might have an idea, and as the session goes on, I will be jotting down little notes to myself about things that could be possible beats at the end. But this is very much tied into what I said at the top of the show about never tie a piece of information to any location, person, or object. Never tie a beat to any one particular set of circumstances. Have an idea for what the beat might be, but then if circumstances conspire that a different beat makes more sense, do that instead. Lydia, I think, didn't you have one of these in Song of the Deep just recently where you had a different beat planned for the ending and then had to swap? Am I right about that?
Yeah. I don't recall it right now.
Well, I will say.
I also...
Go ahead. Nat.
Yeah, don't be shy about these like end cliffhanger beats, because remember, you got a week usually to figure it out in the middle. Like if you just say a bullet rings out, blood splashes, and end it, like you got a week to figure it out.
Exactly.
And that's gonna be worthwhile prep because you know exactly what happened.
Helps you too because you know exactly how the next session starts and what the immediate stakes are. That's
Oh
actually
yeah,
very
having
nice.
a good strong start is a good way to just keep the energy level good in your campaigns long term.
Yeah.
I mean, I did have one beat that didn't happen because of Savi's really bad pun.
You have no right to call anyone's puns bad.
Because of Savi's pun.
What?
Just, I'm not. I took the bad out,
Oh, okay.
but the pun was the
I see.
the pun was the reason. I'm like, you know what? Nope, we're done now. You're not getting a cliffhanger. Fuck you.
Take it away out of vengeance. But no, I totally do that. That's like like the. I've had one cliffhanger I think that I planned completely, and that one because there was a lot of build up to it. But yeah, Waterdeep Dragon Heist has a great one built in. The end of Act 2. Suddenly there's an explosion.
Oh yeah.
I love that. I knew that one was coming though, so I built it up like a motherfucker, and I changed the music right before it happened to really tense music, so they knew something was about to happen. But that, yeah,
Fun.
and what it is can be anything. And Nat, you make an extremely good point. If you don't have an idea for a beat cliffhanger, just do something, and you have a week to figure out what it means and what it is.
Now, Nat, you promised us something.
Oh,
A plea.
So
That a plea to the world, a plea to all GMs out
Nail
there.
your 95 thesis to the
Game-
door, my friend.
game masters of the world,
Unite.
can we please, 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 please stop trying to solve out of game problems with in-game actions? Like, please, like if someone's a total min-maxer, fucking with their magic items is not the way to do it. If somebody is being rude, having NPCs being rude to them is not the way to do it. Be adults and fucking talk to each other. You need to communicate. Communicate.
Clip
It's
it.
obligatory. Yeah.
So
Anyway,
totally.
that's
No,
my main play. Is
yes.
like when there's a problem in the out of the game. There's a problem with the people at the table, and you try to be like, "Oh, I need to solve it by being a GM." No, you need to solve it by being an adult and a friend.
Damn right. So where I actually thought you were going with that was stop trying to solve the world's problems with your GMing, because that goes wrong most of the time.
Oh, also that like don't try to solve racism or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah, smarter people than you have been working on that one for a long time, and your little campaign is not going to be the thing that undoes it. And oftentimes you're gonna step in shit and make yourself look like an asshole. So don't try. It's,
Very high percentile chance.
Yeah.
Like 90% accuracy.
especially when it comes to racism. Come on, you're not gonna. No, give me a
Yeah.
break. It's. Yeah, I mean, I agree. Sometimes it's good to you deal with the world's problems in the sense that you can incorporate some themes from the real world, real life issues and stuff. But like, do not think that like. I think there's lots of great ways to address the social ills of our time. I'm not 100% convinced that tabletop role-playing games are the best way to do it in terms of actually finding solutions. I get skeptical of. I honestly, that's to me the visionary GM that's just trying to do too much with the game. I just don't. Yeah. Go ahead.
Like if it's for personal catharsis, like I as a human being have an special contempt for the thoroughness of capitalism in our world. So usually the worlds I make, often the villains are very wealthy, powerful capitalists that you can then punch in the face. It's very cathartic, but I'm not trying to like do anything revolutionary there.
Sure. Yeah.
Ever, really.
We may have had
It's
a
very
special
easy to hate.
episode after Brexit happened, literally the day after Brexit happened, where an evil wizard called Farage, who lived in a yellow-purple tower, kidnapped the drow for a sacrifice after he had dethroned Baron Cameron.
Wow.
Um,
That sounds like just getting some aggression out.
oh yeah, we murdered the whole village that was here for the sacrifice, and Michael Gove was a flesh golem.
Ugh.
Boris was what was Boris again?
Michael
think
Gove is a flesh
Bavarian.
golem.
Theresa May was a paladin. Like, yeah, it
A
wasn't
little meta.
subtle, is what I'm saying,
Yeah.
but it was satisfying.
Yeah,
Yeah, so keep in mind, anytime you take a piece of the world and put it in your game, you are commenting on that piece of the world, the real world, with the structure of your game. Even if it's just to all your friends, winking yourself for an in-joke, like, be mindful that you are saying real things.
Yeah.
So don't say shitty shit.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm sort of saying is that if you're trying to tackle things that are just too big, too complicated, too full of nuance, you're going to accidentally say shitty shit if you're not
Yes.
really, really careful. And
Yeah,
just don't make yourself look like an asshole.
This is a medium where you don't control the main characters. Remember
That's
that.
true. That's a very, very good point. That is one of the essential points. Yeah, I mean, and there are things you can do. Like I said, yeah, you can take out some aggression, and there's like real world problems of the way that certain people are treated, and in your world, you can make them be treated better as a example, and stuff like that. But don't think that you're like gonna solve the world's ills. You're probably if you tackle especially if like. I guess maybe what I mean is do not try to make that the goal of your campaign or your game, because you're probably setting yourself up for failure.
In general, goals in campaign prep are pretty flimsy. Like, the way I like to think of it is like, ooh, that cool thing I'm imagining, that set piece, I want to make the opportunity for that to happen. I want to lay the groundwork to have opportunities for lots of cool things. But I'm not going to be heartbroken if, like, oh, they didn't stop at that inn. They camped in the woods instead. Oh, well. Maybe I'll recycle it for next time.
I do actually. This is a question before we're going to get off in just a few minutes here, but before we go, I actually do want to ask, because we've been talking about not over prepping, but Nat, I do think for me that there is nothing wrong with every so often a really good set piece.
Oh yeah,
a scene, an occurrence that you really just want to see happen. What is your approach to like set pieces in narrative in a campaign or in a game?
So, if I'm going to spend a lot of time on it, it needs to be like tied into a player character or tied into the stuff that happened earlier in the game as a prerequisite. Because I'm just not going to spend time on something that's not. I'm going to how blues are emergent. But besides that, I'm good with them, but it needs to be fun shit. I don't know. That's really meaningless, isn't it? But be smart in your usability. If you're gonna plan a set piece, make it likely to be used in some way or the other. And there was a lot of ways to do that. Like, I had a situation where the villain was gonna crash the flying city. That's a real example. But like, that's something that can come out of left field after setting it up in like session 2, and like just whenever I need it. So it's the high usability. Besides that, starter sessions are great set pieces because the circumstances are pretty constructed already. Great place to put them. Mm-hmm. And have them in your mind, but don't make sure they have to happen. Like, a prep piece can be as small as, like, this is something one of the NPCs would like to say to a specific player character if this circumstance comes to pass. That can be useful and powerful, but it's pretty small, all things considered. So you're scaling it, the effort you put into it, based on how likely it is to happen.
Yeah.
And don't get me started about like putting together maps for such places the players might not even go to. God, I'm not using a battle map unless you're starting there or it's like a boss arena. Ugh.
Yeah, I've been through that nightmare with, like I said, Roll20 all hours, putting out maps and getting the grid aligned.
Map in my life, and I'm not going to start now.
It is kind of helpful sometimes, but it's helpful for certain types of players who want that kind of precision, and not everybody does.
Yeah.
But it did.
I've done.
So go ahead.
No. don't be afraid to just draw a fucking map. Like, so in person experience, but like, wet erase on a vinyl mat. I have like a box with like 2 Jenga towers with the blocks in it. We'll just come out and put them up in shapes. Like, that's really fun. You can like make like hills and stuff. And I'll have the players join. I have a player who loves drawing maps. So like, hey, Connor, draw me like a sand dune shape. And then I'll put together a little thing with some blocks in it, and we just like take 5 and we do it. And then like, don't act like it needs to be seamless. It's fine. You're making up as you go. Let everyone know that.
Yeah, and you actually know our old system back in the 4th edition days where everything was in squares and in distance in 4th edition rather than in feet. Which, I mean, they equate out to each other because a square is 5 feet, but they would we would just use everyone's D12 because no one used their D12s for anything, and like that was give me your D12, that's your marker on the map, that's you, and then we would just have change from our pockets would be the enemies in a battle, so you all knew roughly where you were in relation to each other.
I have a little gelato canister full of knickknacks that are approximately the appropriate size to mark a character. That's our character pieces.
Whatever works, yeah. Because sometimes just a quick visual is just really helpful. I'm a pretty visual guy, so like that helps me as a player. I like to know where I stand in relation to things. But as a GM, I've gotten more theater of the mindy because just again, Monster of the Week helped with that because there's no definite distances in it. It's short, close, short, far, long, and then it's just what does that narratively mean? Whatever it means in the situation, just work with it. So Nat, I think that's about it for tonight.
Tuesday.
It's we've reached nearly the end of Tuesday, and it's been a pleasure having you. Before we send you on your merry way to enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, where can we find you in the week to come?
Yeah, I exist on the internet almost solely now because our world is a fiery hellscape. But if you'd really like to see my face more, tomorrow on Chromatic Chimera, Twitch, at 6 Eastern, we have the Trio Bright, which is a fun little game, right? To have 3 players, this is the trio. We play Burn Bright, and it's all about the burn and perspectives on the end of the world. And it's also kind of a mech fighting romp because the party is made up of 2 giant mechs and a swarm of 100,000 insects because Burn Bright is wild, fam. That game's fun.
That's James Intracasso's game?
Yeah, there's some other people too. It's and actually it's structured to integrate with Roll20. Although
right, yeah.
Now I'm just gonna stop speaking now because we are a Roll20 Spotlight program channel.
This channel's not, so.
But yeah, over on Chromatic Chimera. And then on Mondays at 6:30 Eastern time with the No Initiative crew is Quest the Soaring City. Which is a quest, and it's super fun, and that game is my baby. So go check that out. And of course, if you want to follow me at CrimeNat, KREIMNAT on Twitter.
Yeah,
that's me.
Where he will teach you all about crime. Not a lot of crime came up this time. That was a big feature of you and Lydia's show before, but very little crime.
Yeah, nor was there time travel.
I usually provide the time travel too. Well, no, I do bring up a little bit of time travel.
You mentioned that.
Yeah, I always do time travel. Yeah. It's a big feature of my things. Do you have any crime you want to recommend before we go?
Arson, always a favorite.
Yeah,
Nat,
I'll stand by. Nice, Nat. It's been a pleasure having you. We hope to have you on again in the future.
Yay.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you around, buddy.
See you in a second.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well.
That was fun.
What have we learned?
Arson is important.
Yeah.
And I guess something about communication, but what I'm really focusing on is arson, as I always am.
Yeah.
And it's been a very nice throwback to the old Kobold days with the Tipstrix and Tuesday. So I'm happy. I'm also Lydia, first hermit most of the time, most of my online stuff. And you can find me on Monday on Encounter Roleplay with Song of the Deep, where, Colin's here as well. So that's the 2 of us. But then Tuesday, after Colin's Afton Cthulhu, I'm on with Zweihänder, Flames of Freedom, Boston Besieged, GM by Anna. So that's where I will be. On Sunday before that, I'm going to kind of leave that to you for Black Void, but I'll be in
I want to hear your
Black Void
pitch
and-
for the game on my channel.
Okay, yeah. Well, I kind of feel like I'm taking all your stuff as well.
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, Sunday will be right here at 7 p.m. with our famed low prep one shots. Gonna play Black Void, which is dark fantasy in space? Question mark? Because the space stuff is not necessarily the biggest thing, but I'm very much looking forward to that. And I'm gonna hand over to Colin because it's your channel. You should do the last bit.
Okay, fine. So yes, thank all of you for watching. Thank you for your questions. I love doing the post-mortem, and I love getting to help the GMs of the world make their games better, and also plead with them to stop doing bad shit, which I think I'm going to incorporate as a permanent element of the show. At least one GM appeal per episode. So think of that going into the next one of these, Lydia. In the week to come, so Monday, Song of the Deep, where I'll be with Lydia, 8 p.m. on Encounter Roleplay. Tuesday, Tuesday. Oh, Nat. On real Tuesday, today's not actually Tuesday. On the real Tuesday, from 2 to 5, I GM Achtung Cthulhu on Encounter Roleplay, Tentacle Tuesday game, where things are heating up because now the really spooky stuff started happening. There's ghosts and elder gods and all of that good stuff. And then Fridays, of course, here every other week. But when I'm not here, so in this coming week, this coming Friday, I am over on Master the Game with my buddy Juice and a great crew of role players there playing Pathfinder. Sly Mother, you asked, what can I do if I missed episode 1 and 2 of the Post-Mortem? They are on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. So we can drop the link in there for you. Lydia, if you'd be so kind, I'd appreciate that. To the channel, there is a dedicated playlist for the GM Post-Mortem in there you can find, and usually almost immediately after these episodes air, I have it on YouTube in the same night. So you'll be able to see this one again if you want to as well. But right, Achtung Cthulhu Tuesdays 2 to 5, where all the spooky stuff happens in World War II meets the Cthulhu mythos, 1944, where our intrepid operators are behind enemy lines right now, and things are getting spicy. And then Friday, I lost my train of thought. Friday, Pathfinder over on Master the Game with Juice and a great crew of role players there, where I'm playing a new character I'm really enjoying named Balthazar the Bastard, who is a what the fuck class is he? I've already forgot my own class.
Oracle.
Oh, he's an oracle. Thank you. Yeah, I can't remember Pathfinder classes that well. He is an oracle of the god of death, whose body is slowly falling apart. It is 2nd edition Pathfinder, Nat. My first time ever playing it. I have no idea what I'm doing. And having great fun, though. So come check that out. And then, yes, every Sunday on this channel we do one of our low prep one-shots. This week is Black Void. The week after that, do we have one already lined up for the week after that, Lydia?
I'm not sure. It's your channel. Why are you asking me?
Because we both have access to the calendar.
I don't know how that one works, to be perfectly honest. I haven't looked at
Black
it.
Void. Yes, Lydia, that one's yours, December 6th.
Oh, it's already December 6th.
Well, it will be.
Wild.
Yeah, well, after, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be 10 candles.
10 candles.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell the people about 10 candles?
No.
Okay. Then I very briefly will. It's scary. It is a horror game in which it's meant to be played in person with 10 candles lit on the table. And when certain events happening, you blow out one of the candles. But the rule is also if a candle goes out for any reason, including someone accidentally bumps it and it falls off the table, or someone actually breathes on it too much, or someone opens the door and some air rushes in and blows out a candle, it still counts. And when the last candle goes out, everyone dies. So that's the horror gaming experience that is the horror gaming experience that Lydia will be GMing here on December 6th, as soon as we figure out how to make it work on stream, because I don't know how to make that happen. So that's going to be fun. And then the week after that is going to be The Witch is Dead. On December 13th, I'm going to be running The Witch is Dead on this channel, one of my favorite one-page RPGs by Grant Howitt. So definitely stick around and see that. So yes, that is all. If you stick around, folks, we are going to be raiding into Game Nights. That's game with two G's and Nights with a K. Our friend Savvy's channel. And see what they're up to. So I'm going to bring the stream to an end now here. I'm going to bring up our ending screen, and then we're going to pop over to see our game night crew. So thank you all so much for joining. It's been an absolute pleasure, and that is all for tonight. So till next time, folks, keep killing it at the table. Good night.
Good night, everyone.